This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglan.
Did you know there's a new lake in Henry County? Did you know there's a new trout fishing opportunity in Louisville? Sometimes it's not always what you know, but knowing where to find the answer. And that place is the new Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. It's complete with statewide fishing regs, boating regs, and helpful information cover to cover. No tackle box is complete without one, the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. We page through next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
When I'm 15, I'm going to be prom queen. When I'm 15, I'm going to have my own limo and private jet.
15 is a good year. Just ask Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. To honor our 15th anniversary of elk hunting, the new Pick 4 option doubles your chance to take home a trophy.
When I'm 15, I'm going elk hunting.
The Kentucky Elk Draw. Is 2015 your lucky number? Get your elk permit and dream big.
sw.ky.gov.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear, flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. The natural tax shelter.
This is Charlie Baglan on Kentucky Afield Radio, and some sports are so heavily officiated that you better know the rules before you even think about dressing out for the game. Some sports, though, are not. Fishing is one of those. You don't have a conservation officer standing in your shadow in your boat with a whistle. Oh, they may catch up with you after a while, but meanwhile, fishing is a sport that is what you might call self-policing. Be honest and play by the rules. Lee McClellan is the editor of the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide, and he is my guest. Roses are red, violets are blue, and so is anything in this fishing guide that's new. What do you think of that?
I think that's pretty smooth.
That's good.
I think that is good.
The Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide, March 2015 till next February. So we got a year of fishing information here, and a lot of people are very familiar with the fishing guide. I mean, look at this thing. It's made out of, what do you call this type paper? It looks like
newspaper print. We used to have shiny and glossy, but now we have newsprint.
This is made to have an extra one or two, to be folded up, put it in your pocket, swat the dog with it, swat flies.
Yes.
It's meant to be in your tackle box.
Tackle box, glove box, boat glove box. It's utilitarian, not fancy.
Yeah, but it's your baby. You are the, editor-in-chief of this?
It's a labor of love because I love to fish, and I think it's very important that our anglers know what the rules are. And I strongly encourage anyone who buys a fishing license this year, get your guide. It's important.
They're given for free anywhere you buy your license. Exactly the type of guide that you should expect to find underneath the seat in your truck in about 7 years.
Exactly. Moldy, kind of coffee stained,
I'm paging through from back to front to get definitions in here on things about boating and trophy fish. And every year, if something changes, if a rule changes or name of a lake changes, anything that's new is highlighted in blue. So I want to go through and get your definition of what this fishing guide is, just in case people aren't familiar with it. They exist. And then we'll go through all the changes new for this year.
Well, the fishing guide is a summary of the regulations dealing with fishing and boating in Kentucky. It's the place to go to find out what the minimum length is for a state trophy fish award. It's the place to go to find state record fish information. Also, how to apply if you think you've got a state record fish, what to go through, what the steps are. Also, all the required equipment for your boat, how to put the numbers on your boat. It also explains where to buy a license, what your license covers, how much they cost, and of course, just general fishing regs. And one of the things we also have is a special fishing regulations section, which explains the individual regulations for each particular water body. East Fork of Indian Creek in the Gorge, for example, or Swift Camp Creek. Some of those streams are under what we call seasonal catch and release regulations from October 1 to March 31 each year, with the exception of Swift Camp Creek. You can't keep trout, and you can only use artificial lures. However, from April 1 to October, the end of September rather, you can keep trout. And in those streams where you can keep trout, the majority of them are open under statewide regulations, which are listed at the very front. I'm looking at it right now on page 3. Those are the default regulations for all water bodies, are the statewide regulations. And that causes some confusion. Farm ponds and private water bodies are under statewide regulations. Most of your lakes are actually just statewide, but some that we want to increase the, say, population of crappie or the length of the crappie, or we've got some stunning situations or whatnot, then they'll have a few special regulations on a particular species. But even that being said, the other species in the lake, if they're not listed in the special regulations, default to the statewide regulation. And that's something that some people don't quite get.
Could it be that somebody says they're making this difficult for a reason and don't know the reason?
I can understand that. And when I'm preparing this guide, I sometimes stomp my feet and go, my God, we are making this overly hard.
Why does it have to be so difficult?
But the reason it's so difficult is our fisheries biologists are very sharp, and they want us to have the best possible populations of fish in our water bodies. They want the most robust water populations of fish, and some of them are managed like Cedar Creek Lake. Cedar Creek Lake has a 1-fish, 20-inch minimum on largemouth bass. That's the only trophy regulation we have like that, because that water body has the potential, and I've been there with the fisheries crews when they've been sampling the lake, and the number of big fat bass in there will startle the uninitiated. That population is done that way because it's robust, and we want a killer experience for people. You know, the 18-inch minimum size limit on smallmouths in Laurel and in Cumberland, I think, from what I've seen, is done phenomenal as far as increasing the number of fish 18 inches and longer in those particular water bodies. I love the smallmouth fish. I fish those lakes as often as I can, and I've witnessed personally that these water bodies have improved. They're not done haphazardly, and they're not done to cause confusion. They're done to maximize what we have.
I see here, since this was your project, you authored this. That entitled you to have a photo that you took on the very front cover.
Yeah, see, I didn't have to bribe anyone for that because I took it, see.
That's good.
And since it's my guide, no bribery. It was wonderful.
Normally, there's an individual on staff named Dave Baker who had to wait all the way until page 1 to get any of his printed. So,
well, you know.
Well, let's talk about things that are new and are in blue. Now, the first time that I see blue ink pop up here
is on page 2.
It's on page 2, and there's a whole list of everything that's new. No culling for trout statewide. This is the entire list of what you will find throughout the guide.
Yes, right? Sometimes also, free fishing days, things of that nature change to reflect calendar shift.
So if you look at page 2, everything is in there, and it would be 5 minutes or more to read all of this. But let's just page through.
One of the new things I'd like to discuss, if we could, is something that's going to come online later this year for anglers, and that is the new Hatchery Creek project that a lot of people may not be aware of. The old Hatchery Creek, if you've ever been below Wolf Creek Dam on Lake Cumberland, was a little small stream that came out of the hatchery. It was mainly for children and handicap accessible. Then it kind of dropped off into a ravine. Well, with that came that ravine area was very, very loose dirt, and it came kind of quagmire-y down there, and if you've ever waded in that, you'd sink up to your knees in silt, and it was just bad. So They're going to do a complete stream restoration of that, and this is going to be probably the premier fly fishing area in the state of Kentucky. And it should come online later this year. And it's going to provide it's going to be a mile-long stream, and they're designing it for maximum trout habitat. They're putting in-stream structures, meanders, runs, shoals, pocket water. I mean, it's going to be fabulous. And it's going to be extremely popular with fly anglers. And it's also going to have big fat fish in it. So it's going to be really, really, really popular, I believe, and something cool that we've done.
The subject is fishing and review of the 2015, that's the brand new Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. Looking forward to one fantastic year. This guide will help tell you how. More when we come back. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin, and if you fish, you really should pick up a copy of the new Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. They are free anywhere you buy your fishing license, wherever that store may be. Or they're also online at fw.ky.gov. I'm sure if you Googled it, it would pop right up. We have Lee McClellan in the studio, and he is the man who puts this together year after year. If something about the guide has changed or is new, it is highlighted in blue. I see here on page 4. We have an addition to the Finns Lake program.
Yes, we do.
Maysville, Mason County Recreation Park Lake in Mason County.
Yep.
These are fishing in neighborhoods. That's the acronym FINS. And it's good fishing close to home, and they're stocked regularly with trout, catfish, and they're close to home. And generally some good facilities around there, like easy parking and picnic tables, perhaps, maybe a restroom not far away. County parks, city parks, a lot of times will have these.
Yes.
So anyway, there's a new one there in Mason County, the Maysville, Mason County Recreation Park Lake. Well, look at that. That'll be good.
And the FINS program is a phenomenal thing. My brother, for example, takes his kids to Millennium Park Lake in Danville. And these lakes are set up where they're stocked heavily, where people can go and have a positive experience. Some of them are stocked with trout. They're stocked with catfish and bluegill and bass when needed. But they're designed to have people who don't have a lot of time, who may be just casual anglers, and go and have a great experience, and hopefully kind of get some children that like, wow, this fishing stuff's pretty cool. I like it when a bluegill makes my bobber disappear and I get excited. And hopefully they'll become lifelong anglers as a result. But the program itself has been an unqualified success.
You tell me, we have a new lake, or a name that has been a lake that has been renamed. It's now Benji Kinman Lake.
Yes, sir.
We knew Benji Kinman. Benji Kinman was a fisheries biologist for the Department of Fish and Wildlife for what seemed 25, maybe 30 years, and left here when he was deputy commissioner.
Yes, when he retired.
And so he loved fishing, and maybe you know a little bit more about how this got named for Mr. Kinman.
It was a way to show respect and to honor his legacy. I was there at the dedication of Benji Kinman Lake when they put the signs in and had a nice little ceremony for him. And it was a way for future generations to know the incredible contributions that Benji has given the anglers of the state of Kentucky. Anybody who goes to Lake Cumberland and enjoys those stripers down there should thank Benji, because he's very instrumental in establishing that and managing those fish in that lake, which is now an incredible economic engine for the Lake Cumberland region. He's also the man who was primarily responsible for the design and implementation of Cedar Creek Lake.
I remember that. So he was the man.
He was the man, and Benji's contributions to this department are varied, wide, and deep, and he's greatly missed. list, and this was a way to honor his legacy.
I'm trying to picture the county. This is either going to be Owen County or Henry County.
It's in Henry County.
And so this is called Kentucky River Wildlife Management Area, WMA.
Yes,
it's on the Boone Tract.
Yes.
Prior to this, that lake didn't have a name?
It did not. But, we've only had that property since last year. So before, I think we called it 100-acre lake or something of that nature. Fantastic largemouth bass fishery, and has an active bald eagle nest.
See a lot of blue ink on page 7.
Mm-hmm.
Floyd's Fork.
Yes.
What's new there about rainbow trout?
Floyd's Fork is now under those seasonal catch and release trout regulations we discussed earlier, in which only artificial lures may be used from October the 1st through the end of March, and you have to release all the trout you catch. Again, from the 1st of April to the end of September, those fish revert back to statewide regulation.
This is in Jefferson County.
Yes, on Floyd's Fork. I floated it quite a bit. It's part of the Parklands of Floyd's system that's still under construction. The lower reaches are, which is a visionary and groundbreaking park and project, and is going to really contribute to an improved quality of life for all the people who live in the Jefferson County region. It's just a very, very forward-thinking and wonderful example of people taking an interest and caring about providing a future to our grandchildren.
Also here on page 7, one thing we talked about briefly earlier was Hatchery Creek, and then there's more information on Benji Kinman Lake, what you can take, what you can't, crappie, sunfish, and such. Worth looking at there because there's several points to be made.
And that lake has proved extremely popular, and there is going to be no harvest of largemouth bass. It's catch and release only in Benji Kinman Lake, 15 fish daily on crappie and other sunfish. And also something that's important to remember, you can't fire the big motor on Benji Kinman Lake. It's trolling motor only.
Over on page 8, Ohio River. It says also see bordering waters on page 15. You got some blue ink here, something new that anglers need to be aware of this year, being 2015-16. Blue channel catfish. Explain what's going on there in the blue ink.
Well, in order to preserve that population of trophy fish, the Ohio River is a phenomenal trophy catfish fishery. One of the best in the nation.
That's where the state record came from.
Yes, the gigantic 104 pound blue cat. Yes, that's 104 pounds, and it was released back into the Ohio River.
I remember Bruce Mitkiff caught that. Yep. What year was that?
I want to say that it was in 1999. I started in the department of 2000. I believe it happened right before I started. So I want to say 1999.
That would have been the story to write. That would still be the story to write.
Yeah,
in retrospect, because it hasn't been broken.
And it's also a line class record, I want to say 50 pound, if memory serves correctly, for the International Game Fish Association. So it's the biggest catfish ever caught on that pound of line. I want to say that, let's look here in the fishing guide on page 29 under the trophy fish. We can find out, yes, Bruce Mitkiff caught it in 1999. I was right. Near Owensboro out of the Ohio River, and it weighed 104 pounds. And if memory serves correctly, it is the 50-pound line class world record. Not all tackle, sorry, but 50-pound line class world record blue cat. So in order to preserve this, anglers can keep one blue or flathead that's longer than 35 and one channel 28 or longer. Catfish under those sizes are under statewide regulation, which on catfish is there's no daily creel on them. But over that size, one fish.
This is interesting that you're the state record fish coordinator, and you will measure the state records by weight. Yet the regulations specify you can't take unless they give a specific length. Does that ever cross? Can you say the state record of a fish is X in inches? Does it apply that way?
Sometimes it applies. Where it does apply is on the trophy fish regulations. I don't think a lot of people understand. We have a wonderful little program that if you catch a big fish that exceeds the minimum inches, and I believe it's on page 26, 27, let's look. And so that way, if you catch a big fat fish but it's not a state record, you can still be honored for it. So all the eligible minimum lengths are on page 27. And the reason that that's done, Charlie, is some fish may be, 25 inches, but, about to spawn, or just genetically a fatter fish that weighs more. That fish may weigh several pounds more than another fish that's, say, 25 inches. So weights amongst fish can vary much, but they pretty much have a good idea that if fish gets to a certain length, that it's usually generally a certain age. So that way, and it's much easier to measure. People can go, they can take out a tape measure. Okay, that fish is 24 inches long. Okay, I need to release it. If it's, if it's say you're on Lake Cumberland and you catch a, 20-inch striper and you think, wow, that's a nice striper, but then you measure, it's like, I got to put it back. It's just easier to measure than a weight.
Yeah. Page 9, we see more blue ink, and again in the new fishing guide, if it's new, it is highlighted in blue. Mm-hmm. You'll find blue ink. And then Trammell Creek in Allen County, new regulation for brown trout.
Yes. That area is a tremendous brown trout region. That little stretch through there and they only survive in what happens is a big spring comes into Trammell Creek there, and downstream of that spring the water is cold enough to support a year-round trout fishery. That's why it's under seasonal catch and release regulations. Again, October 1 through March 31, you can't keep any trout out of Trammell Creek, and you can only use artificial lures. But for browns outside of those parameters, there's a 16-inch minimum and 1 fish daily creel. There's a really good population of browns, and it's in the upper part of Trammell Creek. Tremendous fishery down through there. The whole thing is beautiful.
We're talking to Lee McClellan, editor of the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. We'll have a fishing report and more with Lee after the break. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. I am Charlie Baglin. Share this program. We encourage you. Easy ways to find us. Go to YouTube and put in Kentucky Afield Radio. Also, we are a podcast on iTunes, and myhuntingandfishing.com is a good place to check. Back with more with Lee after our fishing report.
Hi, this is John Williams with the Fish Report for Southeast Kentucky. Fishing's been a little slow in the district the last few weeks as many of our smaller lakes have been covered with snow and ice. We do plan to stock some of the streams in the Daniel Boone National Forest with trout in the coming weeks. Rock Creek in McCrory County, Bark Camp and Cane Creek in Whitney and Laurel County, and also War Fork in Jackson County. Several of those streams still have the catch and release season in effect, Rock Creek, Bark Camp, and Cane, so you have to release any trout during that time. Also in the district, the walleye run should be going up major rivers, Cumberland River below Cumberland Falls, Big South Fork, and Rockcastle River. Those can usually be caught on jigs and minnows. Also, the walleye will be getting shallow in our lakes, such as Cumberland and Laurel, and usually suspending jerk baits work for those walleye as they move shallow and get in a pre-spawn condition. As always, good luck and be safe.
This is Jeremy Shiplett with a fishing update for Northwest Kentucky. Snow and ice melt and precipitation this week. The river levels have risen near flood stage, but are projected to come back down to fishable levels in a couple days. Ruff and No Lynn have been mostly frozen over, but anglers have been walking the bank and casting to nearby brush and picking up a few crappie. For boat anglers at Ruff, North Fork and the State Park ramp are the only ramps accessible at Winter Pool, and at No Lynn, only Site 1, Moody Deer, and Wax ramps are usable right now. Remember, there are still plenty of trout in the Finns Lakes and Trout Lakes on Peabody WMA, and the crappie bite at Peabody will begin to pick up soon as well. We expect rising water this weekend and beginning of next week, so take this time to prepare your gear and plan your spring fishing trips. The 10-day forecast looks good. Spring is getting closer.
In western Kentucky, at Kentucky Barcoo Lakes, it's that time of year when fishing kind of gets tough. Maybe you catch that sunny day. Of course, the bass, they're going to be main lake this time of the year, looking at those main lake points, gravel bars, and, they're going to be out there chasing shad, but they're going to be moving slow because that water's cold. So you're going to want to fish slow. In this muddy water, I'm thinking rattle traps, something that's shiny, something that rattles a little bit is going to be more enticing. If the water clears up, then I'm going to go back to a jerk bait.
and if the water warms up even a little bit more and the sun comes out, then I may start moving into the embayments, maybe throwing that rattle trap, maybe a Carolina rig around some woody structure. But again, we need some sun, we need some clear water to get those bass moving up shallow where they're a little bit easier to catch. Well, this is Paul Reister. I hope you find you a good day to go fishing.
No tackle box is complete without one. The Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. More after the break.
When I'm 15, I'm going to be prom queen. When I'm 15, I'm going to have my own limo and private jet.
15 is a good year. Just ask Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. To honor our 15th anniversary of elk hunting, the new Pick 4 option doubles your chance to take home a trophy.
When I'm 15, I'm going elk hunting.
The Kentucky Elk Draw. Is 2015 your lucky number? Get your elk permit and dream big.
SW.ky.gov.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund, the natural tax shelter.
You are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. Has time sort of just whizzed right on past? Where'd January go? Where did February go? I remember my cousin David, my best friend back when we were kids. I remember him saying once, it was Christmas, next thing you know, it's March. And I still think of that every winter. March 1st, if you like to hunt and fish, that means it's time to get a new license. March 1st is the date. Buy new or renew. If you're planning on getting after them come turkey season and later this year and come fall for deer, the licenses to consider are the sportsman's license, the junior sportsman, and if you're over 65, the senior license. You ought to do that for $5. That senior disabled combination hunting fishing license, it includes everything that the sportsman's license does, plus additional deer permits. The sportsman's license, $95, normally would be bought everything separate and be $150. That includes your combination hunting and fishing license, statewide deer permit, spring and fall turkey permits, state waterfowl permit, trout permit. If you're youth, 12 to 15, sportsman's license for the youth includes your hunting license, permits for 2 deer, permits for 2 turkey, and that'll cost you just $30. These are the 3 you really ought to look at. The senior license, the sportsman's license, and the youth sportsman's license. It's all spelled out in the fishing guide, and in the studio with me is the editor of that publication. His name is Lee McClellan, writes for Kentucky Afield magazine, avid fisherman himself. And thumbing through this guide, Lee, I mean, there's a lot to keep up with.
And there's almost always something we overlook each year, and I keep a running tab. I have one I call my master marked copy, and every time someone brings something to my attention, hey, this could be worded better. I don't know if this exactly reflects the reg the way it should. You have a typo. I keep a running tab, and then I correct it for next year, and we hope to God it'll be perfect, but unfortunately it's a product of humans, so it isn't.
I asked someone in fisheries about 20 years ago when I was doing this program about bullfrog season. Mm-hmm. I said, how many bullfrogs are there in Kentucky? This is basically looking for an estimate. He said, more than 2, but less than 1 billion. I bet you he got it right.
Yep.
That man was named Pete Pfeiffer. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're familiar with the name.
I love Pete.
There was a fish hatchery in Franklin County.
His jokes.
He is funny, but more than 2, less than 1 billion. But nonetheless, on page 9, under other species, if you're a bullfrog gigger, mm-hmm. What's new here under bullfrogs?
Just, again, that reflects the calendar shift. Nothing else has changed.
So May 15, mm-hmm. 2015.
Third Friday in May, yes. And It goes to Halloween every year.
Let's turn the page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything blue on 10.
My favorite kind of page in the fishing guide.
That has to make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you flip over to page 12, several things in blue there. I'll start here with the youth elk permit.
We want our license and permit fees in all of our guides, whether they be hunting or fishing, to be consistent. That way, if our users open up the spring turkey guide that's at the printers right now, they'll see the same license and fee information that they would in the fishing guide, the fall hunting guide.
Consistency.
Yes. That's only if you're drawing.
Up a little higher on the page, 7-day hunting. Is that a new option for
I believe so.
out-of-staters?
So if you're coming for a week and you won't have to go and buy a 1-day hunting all the time. I believe so. A great bargain is if you don't hunt much, the combination is great. You save a lot of money by buying a combo. I usually buy that, or sometimes I have bought the sportsman's license. But if you plan to hunt, you're mainly an angler, but you plan to do some hunting, the combination hunting fishing license is a really good deal.
Free fishing days coming up in June, as usual, on page 14. That just tells you when it is this year.
It sure does.
June 6th and 7th, so you'll see that highlighted in blue.
Yes, sir.
No culling of trout statewide.
Yes.
You put that in English?
Yes, that's what I intend to do. Culling is basically holding a trout in your possession and replacing it with another trout, usually a bigger trout. So
if you choose to keep the trout, it's yours forever.
Yeah, that's part of your daily creel limit. If you choose to bring it into your possession. Now, if you see that it's not quite the size you may want, then you need to just go ahead and release it. Don't stick it on a stringer. And one of the reasons is if anybody's trout fish, which I love to do, trout don't take a lot of handling. So if you carry it into your possession and you put it on a stringer, you put it in a basket, or you carry it around in a live well for any amount of time, there's a good chance that trout will not survive. So if you're going to take that trout into your possession, then it's yours. It's part of your daily creel limit. So you have to decide kind of in the water, do I want to keep this trout or not, and just go ahead and release it.
All right, other regulations that you got to be aware of this year?
Also, something that's been happening, conducting a restoration of the alligator gar, which grow to humongous size in parts of their range, especially in the Arkansas, lower Mississippi River region. They're a very popular fish.
Humongous. How big? Alligator?
300 pounds.
Like a real alligator might be?
Yeah. I mean, they're giant, and I've seen pictures of some that will just that from historic pictures that'll just make you shudder. Going, I don't want to swim where that thing lives.
Why can't we convince alligator gar to eat Asian carp?
We've been working on that, and they're just stubborn. If you catch an alligator gar, it has to go back in.
No harvest of alligator gar by sport fishing methods or by bow. So alligator gar are not for you to take home.
Exactly. We're trying to restore them. So
Ohio River anglers. Now, I'm just going down this list that we sort of forewent. It's here on page 2.
Yes.
And this is a lot, and some of these we've hit, but some we haven't.
One thing, too, is probably we get, especially as the weather gets warmer, we have more calls about boating than we do anything else. And we often get calls about what boat motor and what length boat is allowed on a particular water body. And if you study page 31, you'll see the lakes that have motor size restrictions. You'll see the lakes that are trolling motor only. Some lakes are manual powered only. You can't fire any motor on them. Some have a 10 horsepower restriction.
That would be useful
Elmer
information.
Davis, yes, probably don't want to ski on Elmer Davis. That
would be good information to have as how large your motor can be, and if you can fire it up, if you control only, or can't use any. And this list is where?
This is on page 31.
So these are just good things to know, because a lake is not a lake is not a lake.
Yes.
The regulations will vary depending on where you are.
Well, if you've been on Cedar Creek Lake, that's kind of a self-regulating proposition when you see all the timber and stuff that's in that lake. It's not allowed, but it wouldn't be allowed for long since you would probably break your leg.
You could ski for 10, 15 feet, and then
before you hit a tree and break your leg.
I always like to promote the wearing of your life jacket. Your life jacket's got your back. Maybe you have heard. Everything about boating safety and life jackets.
It's on page 35.
The lights your vessel must have.
Personal flotation devices are under required equipment on page 35, where it's all explained.
Yeah. A nice feature you have here in your guide, Lee, is the Angler's Fish ID pages.
Yes.
You got them here.
That's something we added several years ago, and I think it's very, very helpful for everybody. People who are new fishermen, or new anglers, rather, is the proper term, and people who are inexperienced. And, I mean, I know a lot of people who fish 20 years and they still misidentify fish. Oh, that's a such and such. Well, no, it's not.
Maybe it's not. And some of the easy ones to confuse.
Sauger and walleye.
Hybrid striped bass versus a striped bass.
Extremely hard to identify.
A yellow bass, a white bass. If you don't know, they look a little alike the way their stripes are.
Mm-hmm. Sauger and walleye is probably the one people confuse the most, as well as hybrids and stripers. So remember, sauger they typically in Kentucky run smaller, but they have the more dark, blotchy, saddle-like markings on their back, and walleye always have the white tip on the bottom of the tail fin. Most stripes in a hybrid are broken, but and often many more than one time, and most of the time the stripes on the striper are unbroken and extend well into the tail.
Do you have the state record fish in here?
I sure do. Page 28 and 29.
All right.
Also, on page 28, if you think you've caught a state record fish, the numbers for all of the districts are right there. So the Western Fishery, Northwestern, Kentucky's divided into different fisheries districts. You can also go to our webpage at fw.ky.gov to see a map of the particular districts and which water bodies that they manage. And if you have any questions or concerns or things, you can contact your fisheries biologist at these numbers.
Okay, Lee. Anything else we need to know about the guides available online?
It's available online, fw.ky.gov, in a free printable version. And also, get down to the Cumberland River. The trout fisheries are rebounding phenomenally from the drawdown years, and the state record brook was broken last year twice. And if you want to, there's two fisheries. If you want to try to break a state record, I would recommend the white catfish at Gist Creek and the brook trout in Lake Cumberland, tailwater, and the Cumberland River below Wolf Creek Dam. And that's a fishery. Those fish are getting bigger every year, and it should be broken several times in the upcoming years. So get down there and get on them.
Very good, Lee. Thanks a million.
No problem, man.
Lee McClellan, you read his work in Kentucky Afield magazine. Also the editor of the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. Pick one up wherever you buy your license. More to come. My name is Charlie Baglin, and you're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. You are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back with our final few minutes of the program. My name is Charlie Baglin. And one thing I truly like, one thing I truly hold dear is longevity. I appreciate when someone is good at their job and hangs on to it. Doesn't just bounce around from one job to another, from one home to another, but puts down roots. You probably know these people. Names and faces come rushing to mind when you think of the rocks and the pillars of a workplace, your community, your school, your maybe even your sports team, the same coach, the same announcer. Longevity, people that we almost take for granted. These are the people who have earned that gold watch. A person whose reputation time has not tarnished. My guest all this hour, Lee McClellan, is one of those in my book. I want to take you back about a decade and play a short segment from Kentucky Afield Radio. This was back when I was younger, he was younger. The people we talk about in the show were younger. We talk about state record fish. Some of the names have changed, positions have changed. For example, the Director of Fisheries is now Ron Brooks. At the time, it was Benji Kinman. Maybe you've heard that name in association with a lake in Henry County. But that lake was named for him because of longevity, in large part. So I want to play you this show. It's worth listening to. This is one from our audio archives. Setting hooks and setting records. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio. A hole in one. A grand slam home run. A three-point shot at the buzzer. Feats like these make sports exciting. Still, more competitors yearn for an even higher achievement, one that reaches beyond just the thrill of victory. These are the elite, who set the bar by setting records that may never be challenged. Even the tranquil sport of fishing has its moment in the sun, and it gives a few participants lasting notoriety. It occurs when they least expect it, and there is rarely a crowd to go wild. But when you catch a state record fish, a fish bigger than any ever, your name also becomes a keeper.
I think we're going to see in the next 15 to 20 years more state records, especially as we have more regulations designed to encourage trophy fisheries. We're going to see that manifest itself in state records.
We go inside outdoors with Lee McClellan, State Record Fish Program Coordinator for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. Lee says fishing touches our life, even if we never touch a pole, and it does so in our everyday language. In dating, we commonly refer to someone as being quite a catch, and in business acquisitions, big fish get eaten by bigger fish every day. So just how big is big?
Well, we have a log perch. I believe it's 0.02 pounds. It was a very small fish. They're so small most people can't catch them on hook and line, but we have one of those caught in eastern Kentucky. And I believe our largest is the 106-pound blue catfish taken out of the Ohio River back, I believe, in 98 or 99.
Record fish are measured by weight, not length or girth. There are currently about 50 state record fish. No one person holds two, and of these record setters, some are older, some are younger, male and female, ranging from the devoted angler to those who simply see fishing as a part-time pastime. But that's 50 of nearly 250 species of fish that swim in Kentucky. So there are plenty of records that could still easily be set.
Some of us may have had a state record and not known it.
Tim Farmer, host of Kentucky Afield on KET.
I've caught some great big drum and just tossed them back. I caught a skipjack one time that may have been a state record and threw it back.
Tim has fished lakes and streams across Kentucky with some of the best fishing guides on the water.
But no, and most people never come close because, the state record bass is huge.
Such was the case with Penny Hopper. She hooked the state record crappie in a small lake in Christian County in May of 2005.
They don't make them that big.
That's what I said.
Her rod and reel were a gift for Mother's Day, and it turned into a day that she, her husband, and young son will never forget.
21.5 inches long. It's 4 pounds and 14 ounces.
This is Penny as she appeared with Farmer on Kentucky Afield.
That's a huge fish.
While it was still in the water, he said, "Oh my God, that's a crappie. I didn't know they come that big." And I didn't. I never seen one that big, nowhere near.
When you get one of these large fish that's almost unrecognizable, you think, my word, what is this thing? I've got to check and run it through the book to make sure that this is what I think it is.
Kerry Prather is a fisheries biologist who has certified his share of record fish, including a 55-pound grass carp.
Just keep them alive as long as possible. Call us as soon as possible. The main thing is to get it weighed at a certified scales with 3 witnesses as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more weight it's going to lose.
It must be caught by hook and line. It must be verified by a fisheries biologist. And it must be caught in Kentucky waters.
Fish continue to grow as long as they live, but they never grow as fast as from the time they first strike your bait to the time they wind up in conversation the next day. But in the business of record fish, there is no allowance for error or exaggeration. In our next report, we will look at what some people might do to fudge weights for a chance at glory. We look at where to fish for the big ones, and we page through the history books to learn how some records may never be broken. Meanwhile, there is one undisputed truth. Regardless of the size of any record fish, every angler knows that there are larger fish out there. It's what most refer to as the one that got away. That's Kentucky Afield Radio the way it once was. That log perch, by the way, has now been broken, I think, twice since it was originally set. Is this the spring? Is this the year when you have your name alongside a state record fish? It's not out of the question at all. The big thing about catching a record fish is knowing it when it happens. Just like Farmer said in the piece, you don't just recognize a fish as a possible record. You have to recognize the fish. Sometimes it is so big that you simply don't recognize it for the species that it is. So get the fishing and boating guide. Get familiar with the pages that have fish identification on the pictures, and you can get familiar with what's here. You know, in Kentucky, 250 species of fish afloat in our state, so you never know. This could be your year. Meanwhile, we are out of time. My name is Charlie Baglin, inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.